Meditation is key to spiritual development. How do we translate this into a doing? Welcome to Mega's Wisdom Now. And today we will talk about meditation. This is all well and good, and it's a great ambition, and it's a great dream to have, but isn't it just a dream? I mean, is it really a natural thing to do? It doesn't seem that way sometimes. Sometimes it seems too complicated. Sometimes it seems too difficult. And sometimes it seems too far away from what we're used to doing. Nature is conservative. Once we get used to a certain style, a certain mindset, it's hard to change it. Behavior is built on habituation. Habituation conserves energy, and habituation keeps things simple and things work with it. So in this case, our dynamic of self-transformation, of harnessing, of empowerment, bucks the trend. It's evolutionary. But where the spiritual adventure begins is where you have consolidated these practices in the way that you can apply them, so they become eventually natural for you. And they don't have to be by the book. However, I want to emphasize certain fundamentals that are usually misunderstood, and that's what I've been doing. And perhaps we can get into what is natural about yoga. Natural in the sense that it may be non-canonical, because our lifestyle that we do consider natural may not be so much natural as it is canonical, a habit. And spiritual transformation, before it enters even the domain of so-called enlightenment, has to empty the room before it becomes filled with its natural inhabitants. Now, yoga begins with a concept called yoga karma. And this is what I call internalization alchemy. And there's 3 steps to it. We are aware of the force of our attention in the first step, the passion of our commitment, the fire that drives the whole process. We are aware of our awareness, the presence of our awareness, through the aspiration to do yoga as the motivation behind the passion of our commitment. The driving force behind the fire is the essence of our awareness. And through that we can get a sense of what presence is. Presence is the awareness of being aware. And it's a tangible thing. That leads us to the 3rd step, which opens up to the transcendent. And that's not as crazy and mystical as it sounds. By mystical, I mean otherworldly type mystical. This is a presence that is there. And so as we get into our sense of presence and normalize it, we notice that the boundaries are artificial, that we naturally connect to the environment, that our sense of presence blends into the environment, especially the natural environment and anything that's alive. And eventually, as we progress, we may discover that everything is alive. And as we move through that, our sense of presence shifts gears and opens up to the higher mind, and the higher mind is the part of us that can receive the transcendent. This is called Ishvara in Sanskrit. I don't want to use religious terms, and it's the closest that the sutras get to religious symbolism, you might say. Otherwise, it's more connected with psychological mysticism, which is pragmatic mysticism. It's the how-to aspect. The Yoga Sutras are a manual of how to attain mystical states. And they're a tried and true manual. And there are many similar manuals that are not as popular in Sanskrit and other cultures. But this one is very concise, and it's also very well, it has circulation. It's not some obscure text, in other words. And if you want to take the time to learn Sanskrit, but with these videos you don't have to, but like I took the time to learn it, not to speak it, not to be a scholar of it, but just enough to be able to understand what the sutras are talking about, and to be able to correlate what they're talking about with my ongoing experience over the decades. So internalization alchemy is where harnessing proper begins. And everything after that, the limbs are fillers of that. They support it, they nourish it. We develop a stance, a mental attitude, supplanted by a physical stance, if we like, which I consider the mental attitude more important. We adopt a stance that supports it. We are in the moment. We honor our integrity. We release our expectations. At the same time, we keep our aspirations strong because we become more allowing with our expectations. We kind of get a sense of the organic nature of the process. Patience is developed. And at the same time, we hone our attention as we move through this to notice things that are uplifting in the process, to notice the differences, to notice the changes. Sincerity becomes honored, in other words, at least as far as this process is concerned. And sincerity is a value in our society, globally in fact. However, in practice, people don't trust it so much, it seems. Sincerity might get you taken advantage of. It might not sell what you want to sell. It might not get you what you want to get. It might make you feel weak because you're exposing too much or or in reality, your awareness of yourself is not accurate. Sincerity is always empowering. You always know where you stand. And not only do you know where you stand, but you know more or less that you want to stand there because you have a sense of where it's going to take you, or at least where it promises to take you. Another important thing here is a cultivated loving awareness that doesn't have anything to do with sentimentality or emotional drama or, well, I won't say romantic notions because that's a very good representation in a sense. It's probably the most powerful form of love we have biologically. But at the same time, there's so much hype around love that this is very, very simple. You love a child. You love a puppy. You love a kitten. You love nature. You love beauty. And you are also extending your appreciation to it. So loving appreciation is a thing. And you'll notice that people who promote manifesting, which basically means wanting something and focusing on what you want until it comes to you or is manifest in your life, this accelerates and becomes stronger when you have a sense of loving appreciation. Even if you have things that you should be resentful for, this isn't loving because of something. No, this is your choice to extend loving appreciation, not as a lie or as a faking it, but as a sense of, well, I am. And that's reason enough. Because my point is to change my being into what it is, to change my life into what it should be. And the awareness that I have the ability to do so is a reason to be appreciative, is a reason to be grateful. Just that. Your aspiration is the ideal behind the motive to practice. It's not an intellectual ideal. It's a sense that can come from the heart. It can come from some inner intuitive sense that you can't quite put your finger on, but it's there. And it's even a sense from the very body awareness of, yeah, this feels better. Even if I don't meditate as I'm supposed to, so to speak, I'm actually making a move to harness my own being, to be myself for real. They say, be yourself. And many say, well, that's what gets me into trouble in the first place. Well, that's because you're not yourself. Being yourself means not just remembering who you are, but cultivating the ability to awaken something that's latent, that isn't active, that's been taught to go to sleep or threatened to go to sleep probably at a very young age, or who knows, even in past lives, if such things are. And we have the inner fire that is the carrier of our force of aspiration. So the opening to the mystical beingness right behind your brow, or right behind your chest at the heart level, or right behind your navel at the abdominal level, or in the general sense. That's what the force targets to stimulate a certain reception to the real goal of internalization, which is the experience of the ineffable here and now, We have the presence of our being, we have the presence of existence. And these come together through internalization alchemy, and the rest of what we do in yoga empowers that, nourishes it, brings it into focus, all the way to the final three steps, which form the unitary, concentrated distillation of spiritual practice known as samyama. This is concentration, meditation, and the state of samadhi. And concentration, meditation, and the same state of samadhi are a single movement. And once you get into that movement and reach the state of samadhi, which is not that big of a deal, it's simply stabilized meditation that turns into a certain radiance, and then you can concentrate on other things, and your mind will incorporate them into your sense of presence and being, and whatever pattern they have, whatever quality they have, whatever potential they promise, will become owned by you and expressed by you, and thus empowerment is a thing. So once you taste that something is there beyond the personal realm, your stance reflects the desire to nourish that. That is the yoga asana. The stance of the body simply makes things easier, the energies to conduct. The energy cultivation that you do gives that something, that sense, gives it substance, because it energizes, becomes more tangible. You can relate to it more easily, more organically. And when you then can focus on your senses, you can actually place your attention, and it's not your normal attention now. This is energized attention that's facilitated by your stance that accepts the yoga process, which is, it's almost like a signal that comes through an electrical circuit if it's not amplified. You can barely hear it, but then you put the amplifiers in there, you add some juice, and then it comes and becomes loud and clear. So let's get to the heart of the practice. Let's get into meditation. We left off our concentration practice being a localized attention. Now, according to the sutras, this is a binding of our awareness field locally, on the awareness field. A point of all of your reality is the awareness field. We spoke about that in the last discussion. When our subjective portion of the awareness field, where the attention is, moves and touches the objective form of the awareness field, whatever you're focusing on, you have a feedback loop. And this feedback loop is narrow, because what you want is to narrow it down and exclude everything but the awareness field itself. You even want to exclude your sense of I, you want to exclude your intellect because you're not intellectualizing, and you even want to exclude your mind, which is based on the five senses that constantly keep telling you what you're perceiving. So when you focus on the senses themselves, that's a great place to begin, because you're not going to shut down your natural organic senses. What you're going to do is dig into them right at the place where the sense receptor touches the nerve of the sense, like the optic nerve touches the retina. You can just focus on that. It's a physical location. That makes it even easier. Or you can focus on your eardrums and your inner ear, right where the stimulus comes in and then moves into the auditory nerve. This area provides a kind of sensate awareness, a proprioceptive awareness, that is a hop, skip, and a jump between the actual organic sense and the neurological effect, which links directly into your consciousness. So we're doing this neurologically here. This isn't unnatural. This is just a choice of attention. Then the sutras take us one step further. They go, okay, you're focusing on attention. You've concentrated to the point of excluding everything else. Just by placing your attention and seeing what's there, this is where mindfulness comes in, but it's an active mindfulness, because your mind isn't verbalizing, first of all. You're not being overrun by emotions. They're flowing through you. You're becoming a superconductor of all your stimuli that can just pass through you. And then what you do is you take that one point of focus and you dilate it. You allow it to expand until it becomes you, because it always was you. And the magic of this is that you don't have to displace anything, you're not pushing anything out, you're not overlaying on top of anything. All you're doing is just ignoring it because you're focused on something else. And you're not focused on something artificial. You're focused on the essence of awareness, on being present. Presence is a tiny, tiny sense that's very hard to define. And it can easily be conflated into all these things because we intellectualize or emotionalize. But presence can be experienced as a field, a medium of itself. And this field then, when everything else is taken out, has its own life, which is our life. And it's not just life force. This is the life of the presence. It's not easy to put into words. So concentration is a contraction of attention without strain, and meditation dilates that contraction. So anything that's in it, which is nothing but the essence of your awareness, just permeates everything. And it becomes a global focus. And if you can sustain that, you naturally move to the eighth limb. We don't even need to talk about the eighth limb, which is samadhi, because that is a result of meditative practice that is supported by all the previous steps. Now, if you just start meditation and try to just focus on something and focus on your awareness and stop your thoughts and just stay there, it may not necessarily lead to samadhi because you lack the preparation. What will happen most likely in the most constructive sense is that it will lead to filling in the blanks. You'll be, oh, my energy needs working here. I need to kind of modify my stance here. I need to do this. I need to do that. And a lot of this happens spontaneously, sometimes subconsciously. So there is kind of progress, and one fine day, poof, I'm in a state where the meditation is dilated naturally in a relaxed manner, so I experience the radiance of presence. Presence isn't just some subtle sense. It becomes a radiance, and that's why it's often likened to illumination. This radiance is body-mind centered. It's not just in your head, and it's not just a sensory, sensate type experience. It combines the body-mind together, and at the same time, it is naturally open to the presence of the beyond, of the ineffable, of Ishvara. And I'm non-denominational, non-religious here. I am spiritual, however. I am mystical, because this is a mystery. So we do these discussions not as an informative analysis, but as a presentation, a dialectical presentation of a mystery. There's no dialogue going on between you and me, of course, but we're spiraling around the meanings here to be able to wrap our heads around it so we can engage with it. Like many approaches that amount to jumping straight to the point, the result is usually that persistent practice will pay off. But being different, there are points that we de-emphasize or maybe have distorted, so our progress may be hit and miss. This more systematic manner is not mechanical and it's not artificial. It's actually a living dynamic, but because we are careful about what one step is, what the other step is, what the third step is, the mind is not going to get in our way so much because it'll feel secure in the fact that it's organized the information without needing to intellectualize it. Because meditation is natural. Yoga is natural. It is non-canonical, as I said, but is natural. There's a difference. And I'd like to focus on one misunderstanding here that is often presented. Dilation of focus, as presented in the Yoga Sutras, is not just a reverse or expanded form of concentration. We are not speaking of the dichotomy between convergent focus, which is concentrating to a point, contracting, and divergent focus, meaning that we're still concentrating, but our points are spread out. But you talked about dilating your point of focus. Well, think about it this way. I have a circle. Imagine a circle, and there's a point in the center of the circle. Concentration is focusing on the point, and that's well and good. The problem is that we are hardwired to keep shifting our attention. That's why it's a constant battle to stop the mind from doing that. And it's an often losing battle, because the more we do it, the more we resist, because the nervous system itself goes, hey man, what if something attacks you? What if this? What if that? Or how about this? So it constantly, to protect itself, because and to avoid the stress of excluding everything, it creates this scenario where we're at war with ourselves. So what divergent focus does is focuses on the circle, on the periphery, the circle itself, all points. And it's like, no, you don't need to focus, you don't need to fight, because you're already taking the whole field into account. And your attention is on the field, it's gently on the field. I think I've mentioned this before. If you look at the horizon, place your arms in front of you and just widen them, and just see where your peripheral vision can still see your hands clearly. And then see where you can't see your hands anymore. Both of them at the same time. And just stop it there and gently look at them. That's divergent focus. Closer to home, if you focus on a chakra, for example, or energy center like the heart, instead of tensing to a point, one point in the middle of the heart, just focus on two sides of your chest around it. And that's kind of divergent focus. And it's easier, and it also has the same effect. So how do you dilate this? Well, this is where the metaphor kind of is based on contracted focus instead of divergent focus. Because what you really do is you are looking at the stimulus here of your global attention, so to speak, your globalized attention, and then you are noticing your awareness field, that you're diluting your attention. What is it that you're focusing on? You're focusing on the awareness that's doing the attention. You're not focusing on what you are seeing. You're not defining form and function here. You are too busy, because your awareness is spread out so much. As long as it can stay balanced, and it is a little bit of a balancing act, a kind of a coordinating act in a way, but you can learn to do this, and this will increase your neurological connections, and it will become easier over time. So as you do this, meditation is more natural, so because the dilating is mechanically there already, you're already kind of global. So what happens is that you notice that your field itself is awareness. And then you can move into contracted focus as well, and see that, yeah, I'm focusing on this one thing. And behind this one thing is me, is my mind, is my consciousness. And I'm focusing on this, and now let's expand it everywhere. So it's not divergent focus, it's dilating attention. Dilation of focus is not just a reverse or expanded form of concentration, in other words. But it is the heart of meditation. It transforms the basic nature of concentration into an awareness of the essential nature of the awareness field itself. And that's why I spend so much time talking about the awareness field, because it's a fundamental concept in spiritual alchemy, at least in the Indian traditions. And it's expressed in many of their sacred texts. The Antakarana, for example, is a thing, the inner organ. And the inner organ and its four operative qualities, intellect, perceptual mind, the first person pronoun awareness, the I thought, and the field itself. And of all of these four, the truth is the field. Everything else is just what the field does. So your focus doesn't have to fit anything else. So your dilation ensures nothing but what was in that focus in the first place, which is your pure consciousness. And this is all what was going on in yoga or harnessing. It was why you were doing internalization alchemy, to get that sense of presence. These things are talked about by others, like Eckhart Tolle speaks about presence all the time. Yogis speak about this all the time. And then when you open up to divinity, you expand your sense of presence to include not the other, but the other side of your own existential coin, the transcendent self. And I'm not even going to attempt to say, well, you need to understand this, because you won't understand it unless you experience it, and you can't experience it unless you place attention on experiencing it, unless it's important for you to experience it. But I'm going to try to motivate you, because I think it's an important thing these days. People have all these problems. They may not be solved directly by these harnessing dynamics, but it'll put you in a position to be able to deal with them far better than any psychological technique. I find these too mechanical for my tastes. Those seem artificial. Well, fake it till you make it. There's no faking here. Like I said, canonical versus non-canonical. You don't have to fight the world to be non-canonical. They're not going to burn you for being a heretic, because it's none of their business. This is something personal to you. This isn't something to cry out to the world. It's sacred in that sense. I am a yogi. I reject those labels. I want the information to carry through. I want this experience to be something that even if you can't relate to it, it'll bring you to a point where you can embark on a journey that cultivates the ability to relate to it. Because it's there, it's in us, it's our next step in evolution, but human evolution is such that we need to design that next step. It's already designed through past experience, but we need to take initiative. We are choosing to turn our switches on, in other words. This is what harnessing is about. Thank you for listening. If you like this material, please subscribe. I won't ask for anything more. But I will say that if you do want to make a comment, I will not just listen to it. If you want to ask a question, if you want to make a critique, I will address it. And it might even be a topic for the next discussion. So for now, take care. Megas out.